Okay. I'm Avon Waters, pastelist, and I'm going live for the first time in about 2 years. I'm trying out a new system. Things didn't go so well a couple years ago, but hopefully today we are going to demo a quick little how I assess a painting that is maybe 85 to 90% done. And I'm going to do it live and go through my thought process. Let me switch cameras and I'll show you the image, and it is about 85, 90% done. Okay, this is the image that was painted yesterday. It is a pastel. It is on sanded 12 by 12. It is on a sanded UArt paper, but I have added a lot of texture. You can see some of it up in here. And there's a lot of texture. I like to work on a lot of texture. So this is the image. This is where I ended the day yesterday. I have basically the idea down. And so now I've sat back off camera and I've assessed this. And so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fix some of the things that are, oh, we had a camera shut off just now. Hang in there. On. Okay. All right. For some reason, I lost my video. I think I'm back now. Okay. So this particular image is, when I assessed it off camera, I'm thinking, man, this horizon line has crept up. It started down in here. And as I painted, and this often happens to the pros, it happens to the beginners, it happens to everybody, is that as we paint, we'll lose track of where that middle part is. I've tried to put this horizon line in the 1/3 mark. But when you look at this, you see that the 1/3 mark, being 12, is way down here. 3, 6, 9, and 12. So I probably started off at about 4, trying to get it somewhere, the majority of that center line somewhere below the center, which is 6. But look, I've crept up within 1 inch of that 6. So I have two options here. I could lower this way down by bringing the oranges down in here, or bring some of this down and some of this down so that we have a center of interest that goes towards the center of the 1/3 and maybe does something else later on. Another option is to raise the center of interest because the center of interest is also competing. I've got this beautiful set of blues and aquas and turquoise mixing with these color palettes that I've chosen. But my real focus is this band of light going across the slight hills that approach this lake. And so my center of interest is really going to be right up in here. But this is really distracting. So instead of lowering this, I'm thinking my solution would be to wind through some reeds that might be in the foreground at the lake and have the lake peek through in places back behind these growth structures back in here. And since this is in the 3 to 4 inch range, right in here, I'll have some highlights on those trees off in the distance on the other shore. So in other words, the lake will start reading from foreground, something obstructing it like cattails or reeds, or maybe a small peninsula coming out into the lake, and then behind here some more of this lake color off in the distance, and create a shoreline that is over in here somewhere and scatter it through. So the lake reads like it's a foreground, a middle ground obscured by vegetation, and it's going up into there. And then I can get my highlight into here. So that's the plan. But I wanted you to see how it is so easy. I have taken X's and marked here, and I've had that and before you put an X there to try to keep yourself out of the center. And you end up, by the time you're focused on color, you're focused on transitions, you end up with something like this where it has crept up on you. And even though it's not the center of interest, and this is going to be, it's still going to draw the eye towards the center of the picture and split this thing in half. So we don't want that. If you have any comments, I don't have anybody monitoring my chat right now, but please tell me where you're tuning in from. Stick it down in the chat comments, and I'll take a look at that when I get a chance, and it'd be nice to see where you're coming from. February 5th, I have a live event where I will be painting along and sending out reference photos, and we'll start from scratch, and we'll paint for about an hour and a half on an online painting party. So if you're joining me now, be sure to go to my website, sign up, RSVP for the painting party under the events section, and we'll get you that information so that you can join the party on the 5th. If you're watching this after it's live, please be sure to sign up and sign up for the newsletter or RSVP for events that you see on my website. Okay, if you're not subscribed to my free tutorials, do that too. All right, so now I'm going to grab some pastels and I'm going to start making some changes here. This is kind of the base color. So let's first open up a passage to get the eye up through some of this greenery. And let's establish some lake back in here off in the distance and get that closer to some of the areas up in there. And we don't have to do it all the way across. All we have to do is move the eye up through this thing a little bit, through this greenery, into some sort of opening. A lot of lakes have canals. And we break up this line just a little bit here so that we know that this is not a sharp edge. So I'm going to move that up in through here. I'm going to open that up a little bit. And again, my center of interest is this shoreline over here. Now I'll have to look at this from a distance. Probably this is not going to get finished, but already you can see we have started to use this mist horizon as an opportunity to move the eye through this painting a little bit more. And so even though I had this thing to 85, 95%, it is not going to go much further than that today on camera because I'm going to have to do some blending and things here. But I wanted to show you how assessing this off camera lets us make some decisions that will really change the dynamics of this painting. And it's up to me to figure out how to make this thing work once I make these changes. So now, remember up in this area, this was the area that drew me to this scene to begin with, is some light coming across the top of these trees. I've taken a lot of liberty with the colors, so now it's up to me to see if I can create, because these colors here are in the oranges and peachy reds. They go well with the reds and magentas that I've used throughout this. And blue is this blue-green is a complement to these oranges. So it really becomes off as striking. So what I'm going to try to do, because this is our 1/3, we go in 3 inches from this side, and we come in 3 inches from this side, and we've got our 1/3. So if you're just joining me, stick down in the chat where you're coming from. I don't have anybody monitoring the chat today, but I'm just trying to show how I make assessments and how I take a painting that yesterday was 80, 90% done and try to turn it into something that's a little closer to finish. So by taking the family of colors, and we're in the peaches and oranges, which are red, yellow, and red will make your orange. So I come down a little bit more, and this yellow is blending with the orange. So I get a little hint of some of that orange that's in there. And I start to taper this off, and this is our 1/3 line here too. So I can create kind of an L-shaped composition of interest anywhere across that line. So there we go. And I let this fade off just a little bit. I'm not pressing near as hard. Is that done? I'll have to assess it again after, probably off camera, but we're getting closer. Now, if I put lighter highlights in here, because as we go away, I can assess this right now and I can say, well, I've got the same color here as here as here, the same values. As we go further into space, our values lighten up, unless we're painting tonalism, in which we would play with the hues a little differently. Now, just for now, I'm going to blend in just a little bit of this yellow in here, because it's that light coming back kind of down and off the edge of that shoreline that is giving us this kind of center of interest over in that side. But I'm going to change those colors just a little tad. I'm going to try to peel. I'm going to try to find a. I'm going to try to find a kind of a light green. Because it's off in the distance, I need a green that has a lot of pale whites in it. I may grab several different greens here and see what happens. But I'm going to try to incorporate some greens back in there to go with that aqua. This is kind of a blue-green, but I'm not sure it's the right color yet. But it may lighten up that aqua that we put in there to try to create this sense of distance across the lake. And I want to get some of that green up into, there's always a little foliage around these lakes, around the edge, these lakes that don't have a lot of cottages built up on them. Typically anymore, all these lakes have cottages, but there are a lot of lakes, they had the foresight to try to create some wild areas, keep some areas for water filtration and things like that. And this lake is no different. And because we're using some greens up in there, and this is now turning into a maybe more of a wetland with some other foliage and things and outcroppings to get us back there. I have to get some green, not just isolated in this spot here and not just in blue-green. So let me try a little lighter green. This is a really nice bright, and because this has a little green in it, I'm putting it against these reds, and it's really, really popping. The use, I really like the use of complements in highlight areas in order to get things to work. And that is breaking up that shoreline. I don't want, it's so far off in the distance, that humidity, that air that is off. You can't have a straight line like we had when we started this video down here. You've got to give that appearance that you're seeing through that atmosphere. I like to say I like to try to paint the air around an object rather than the object itself. And by breaking up that line across the edge, where do the tree lines begin and where does the sky begin? Where do the trees and the lakeshore begin? Some of that is what we're after as we try to think about how we make these finishing touches on this. And I just like, I'm not pressing hard at all. I just like to get, since this is the 1/3, like to get some of that magic that's happening with the green against the reds coming down through here too. Now look, by just a little bit, not pressing hard at all, I've been able to marry these colors up through this. Before, when we first started, this color was very isolated, this turquoise, so to speak, body of water. And so if we can marry some of the colors that are up in here to down in here, not much, just a very light, soft touch, then we make good connections and joints between these two areas of the painting. And that's what we're after, especially when you're in that last finish. If you just joined me, be sure to RSVP on my website and you'll get announcements for upcoming live events. There's one February 5, 2026. And everybody, we're going to do something different. We're going to do a paint along. That paint along will be, once you register, you're going to be receiving, as we get closer to the 5th, you'll get reference photos. If you're watching this well after the February, then just by registering, you are able to get the same sort of thing for future live events. It's basically a party. This one today is an instructional video, and I have free tutorials on my website, YouTube. But by registering, you will be able to join the party, meet new artists, new friends, and we'll just have some fun that day. So, okay. There I go, saying okay. I did notice in my video I did 2 years ago that I used the word okay a lot. So, okay, there you go, okay. All right. I do all right a lot too. Now, I'm going to try to find some lighter blues because I still have this color, this turquoise, this blue turquoise that is down in here. It still is the same value here as it is here. We broke that up off in the distance and kept that shoreline a little bit with mixing some colors. But I need to get some lighter blues and some highlights as this winds its way through this wetland back to the main lake. So I'll try to find some lighter blues, blue-greens that I can stick in there. This one's turning out to be interesting. Let's see how far I can take it down before it becomes obnoxiously similar. Yeah, oh, look at that. A lot of times off in the distance, and I know this from doing plein air, off in the distance, right where we'll call this the land, but it's really a group of reeds or trees, right where some sort of non-water entity meets the water, there tends to be, it appears white, but it's not. It's a highlight, a specular highlight that separates the reflection or the shadow and creates a really bright spot. And that's working out kind of well there. We'll see how it does from a distance after the video's off, but we'll stick a couple of those in there. We can correct it. I need something even a little bit lighter than that. And since we've got green, I'm going to pull out kind of a peachy pink. Red and greens are opposites. And these peachy pinks might allow me to create some sense of ripples through this reflected area here. And putting the light against the dark down in this area is working really well. Doesn't show up so well up in these areas. So by experimenting, I get to see where they are working and try to create some of those areas. And don't get stuck. This is one thing beginners do. Beginners get stuck just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth like this for water because they see the ripples and the things. This is a lake, so it's fairly still. It's not a windy day. But you also have to go down. When I was first learning, one of my instructors said you make a horizontal mark, and she took a paintbrush and went down. But I've gotten to the ability, because I wear gloves and so I can just come across there and I can make some down streaks wherever I want those down movements. So you don't just get this horizontal movement, but as you get closer, you get a little bit more of this movement in here. Okay, there's more to do with this. I probably have to stick some highlights in here. I have to gradiate the sky a little bit, but you can see each area of this painting has to be examined, looked at. Too many beginners will say, oh, I'm almost done with this, and they just keep trying to paint at the pace they did for the beginning and the middle stages of this painting. And that's not the goal in the end. In the end, it's just a few marks here and there. Granted, I had to have a lot more because off camera I saw that I had this horizon stuck in the center and I didn't have the kind of hot spot I needed here for my 1/3 intersect for the center of interest. So I solved that. If you're joining me late, I solved that by breaking this band of foliage, probably lake weeds or reeds, and showing the lake off in the distance closer to the 1/3 mark that's up in here. Now granted, if I measured from here to here versus from here to here, I bet that's probably about the 4.5 to 5 inch mark, the same as this was. But because I brightened all this up, because I've gone across with some brighter things through here, and because I've brought some bright things in here, I now have more of a center of interest by the way the highlights are working than just by the way the shapes were placed on the page. Okay, hopefully that gives you an idea of how when you reach the 90–95% mark that you can assess a painting and slow yourself down. That's the key. We've spent almost 30 minutes just making a few marks, and probably half of this painting was done in 30 minutes. I got to the 0 to 50% mark in 30 minutes, where here I am just trying to get that last 5 or 6%, and you do it slowly. That's the key. If you're liking the content of this video, hit the like button. And if you're tuning in late at the end of this or after February 5th, 2026, be sure to go online, sign up, so you'll get announcements for RSVPs for future live events. And the one coming up February 5th, you can still RSVP for, and I'll get you reference photos out. And we'll have a party rather than an instructional period. It'll be instructional, but we'll have a party. It's time to party. All right, everybody, so long. Bye-bye.